Keep politics out of football. I already told you last week we can't do it, and here we are 2 weeks later. And it's even more evident that politics and football are interwoven in ways that we can't even comprehend. Politics and football are interwoven in ways that actually sound absurd at this point. We'll come on to it. But it's been a crazy couple of weeks since the last episode. I think once I recorded that first episode, that week there was the whole Vini Jr. Racism incident in the Benfica Real Madrid game. There was a couple other things as well with Gianni Infantino and the Board of Peace, and that's developed quite a bit since then. So, yeah, I was itching to record like straight away, and I was trying to resist the temptation of trying to record too early, and I'm still trying to figure out the best like workflow for the podcast, and when do I film, when do I edit, when do I like release the podcast. At the moment I'm still doing bi-weekly episodes, but with the way that the news is going, I might need to do weekly episodes, but I need to figure out a workflow, and I'm going to be transparent. This is the third time I've tried to record this podcast. The first time I recorded it here, and I don't think I was in the right like frame of mind. Not frame of mind, but I don't know, just the creative juices weren't really flowing. Then I recorded again during the week, and it was better, but I don't know, and I just didn't really like it. So I was like, okay, cool, third time lucky, hopefully. But I don't want to be a perfectionist. I don't want to overthink the podcast too much. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. This is a work in progress, and I think I even said to one of my friends who I sent the podcast to, right now, until I get to like episode 30 or 40, this is still like a pre-season. I'm still figuring out format, still figuring out branding. I'm not even trying to spend too much on branding. Not like spend too much thought on branding as well, because at this point, I'm just trying to establish myself and be credible as a podcast. I think if I say, oh yeah, I've got a podcast, I've only got one episode or like 3 episodes, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. But if I have like 37 episodes, then that's more substantial, and I feel like I would feel more confident in pushing that out. So once I get to that stage, then I'm definitely going to ramp up the content production, the branding. But for now, we're just warming. So by listening to the podcast this early, you're an early investor in Keep Politics Out of Football coin. I'm going to go into the moon. Thank you for leaving a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your feedback. And yeah, let's get into the episode. So we got a jam-packed episode today, as you can imagine, and there is no better place to start, well, no other place to start really, than with what's going on in Iran and the Middle East. Okay, so unless you've been under a rock for the past week or so, you would have definitely seen the airstrikes that were launched by the US and Israel on Iran. And on the first day of these airstrikes, the Iranian leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed. And I think the intention of these strikes were to cause a regime change in Iran. But that's so far been unsuccessful. There's a lot going on in the region as well. Post the initial strikes from the US and Israel, there's since been counter-strikes from Iran. There's been strikes on UK RAF bases that the UK government have said didn't come from Iran. I'm not sure where those strikes would have came from if they're not from Iran. But all I'm going to say at this point is do your research. Now, this is going to be a thing I'm going to say throughout the podcast until the day that I stop doing the podcast, is do your research.
But do your research. Hey, where's Carlos? Where's Carlos?
So look into what's going on in the Middle East. What are people's motives? What are their aims? What are their methods? Are they justified? And yeah, and more importantly, what does the future hold for the Middle East, Iran, and the rest of the world? Because whether we like it or not, we are being dragged into this conflict in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so we've covered what's going on in the Middle East and Iran. If you cast your mind back a few months, you'll remember that Donald Trump was awarded the FIFA Peace Award by Gianni Infantino and FIFA, and since then has kidnapped Maduro from Venezuela and now launched airstrikes on Iran and is willing to send ground troops to Iran. I don't know. Doesn't really seem that peaceful to me. And again, with hindsight, it's easy to say this, but at the time, anyone would have told you that this man is not about peace. And it only took a few months for that to be confirmed. But yet, there is no real repercussions, no backlash. There is no blowback on FIFA, it seems, that they awarded a peace award to a man who has then launched attacks on other countries without provocation. And it's puzzling that this is just going on without anyone seemingly having the power to do anything about it. So yeah, the FIFA Peace Prize or Peace Award, whatever it's called, winner is now not looking so peaceful. But what is the knock-on effect on the World Cup that is due to take place in America and Mexico and Canada in the summer? Well, it's looking like Iran won't be there. And can you really blame them? They are expected to play all of their 3 group games in the United States. And can you imagine what that would be like if that were to be the case? It's looking like Iran won't be at the World Cup though. The Iranian Football Federation president Mehdi Taj said on TV in Iran, with what happened today and with that attack by the United States, it is unlikely that we can look forward to the World Cup, but the sports chiefs are the one who must decide on that. What they decide, we don't know, but can you really blame them for wanting to withdraw? Can you only imagine what it would be like for the players, the fans, the coaches, the officials to actually go to the United States and play all 3 games in the United States? That would be insane. If Iran were to play at the World Cup, could we ensure that they were treated fairly by officials, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch too? Their hotels, their food, all of that sort of stuff could probably and would likely be messed around with. So yeah, I don't know. I don't blame Iran for wanting to withdraw from the World Cup. And I think in this situation, football is quite insignificant. When lines have been crossed and people have been killed, football is probably the last thing on people's minds, especially when in this scenario, football would probably be used as a bargaining chip and a way to leverage power against Iran. So they are probably not wanting to give that opportunity to the United States. But I think the real losers here are the players that have worked hard to qualify, the Iranian players. It's a shame. And World Cups only come every 4 years. And I can imagine this might be the last opportunity for some players to play a World Cup. I know Mehdi Taremi is not the youngest guy. So will he be still around in 4 years' time? Yeah, actually, let me actually do some research. I saw a quote. Well, I saw a tweet. Sorry, let me not even lie. I saw a tweet saying that Jeremy wanted to sign up for the army, but that could have been Cap. Could have been Cap. Okay, yeah, no, he's not. Taremi is not joining the Iranian army. But yeah, he's not going to the World Cup, it seems, as well. So it's a shame. And they're the people that are really missing out, as well as the fans who would have loved to have seen their team play at the World Cup. I'm sure there's plenty of Iranian Americans who wanted to see Iran at the World Cup as well, and they are going to be missing out on that. But do you know something real funny and ironic? That the team likely to replace Iran in the automatic qualification for the World Cup is Iraq. Iraq. And you will have no doubt seen many of the parallels made about Iraq and Iran in terms of how their conflicts are unfolding in the Middle East and, US intervention. So it's ironic that Iraq would take their place at the World Cup. But, I would be interested to see if there's any data on how favorable this conflict, airstrikes, war situation is amongst American people and how they feel about Iran in general, because I'm sure most people don't see Iran as like the enemy in the same way that Iraq was vilified post 9/11 and stuff like that. So I'm sure most people would be like, Iran, Iraq, like most people wouldn't even know the difference, you know? I mean, they ain't got passports, so how would they know the difference? And they ain't got education, so how would they know the difference? Anyway, let me leave the Americans alone for a sec. But yeah, and so Iraq could replace Iran in the automatics, and then the UAE, who have also been on the receiving end of some airstrikes, I think from Iran, they would replace Iraq in the playoff qualifiers taking place in a month or so. So yeah, a lot to keep an eye on when it comes to the Middle East and its knock-on effect on football. But as you can see, we can't keep politics out of football because they keep inserting themselves and keeping on the United States, FIFA, Gianni Infantino, the Board of Peace. We've got to talk about what they announced last week. So you might have heard about the Board of Peace. What is the Board of Peace? Well, essentially, the Board of Peace is Trump's version of the UN. He didn't like the fact that he wasn't in charge of the UN and what was going on. So he was like, I'm just going to make my own. And the Board of Peace are in charge of the reconstruction of Gaza. Go figure. I don't know how Donald Trump, by the way, who is the permanent chief of the Board of Peace until he dies, he made himself in charge of the Board of Peace, and they're going to spread peace throughout the world through airstrikes, it seems. And did you know to join the Board of Peace, countries need to pledge $1 billion worth of investment into the Board of Peace and their efforts? And speaking of investment, last week they announced a $75 million plan to reconstruct Gaza through football. Last week, FIFA, Gianni Infantino, Donald Trump, at the Board of Peace, their first Board of Peace meeting, announced a $75 million plan to reconstruct Gaza through football. Now, they want to get investment to build 50 small-size pitches, 5 full-size pitches, a FIFA academy, and a national seat stadium, 20,000 seats. My first question with that is, which national team? Who's going to be in the academy? Because from what I understand, a lot of people have been displaced or killed. So who's going to play in these academies? Who's going to play on these pitches? Is there going to be footy addicts in Gaza? I doubt it. So who is this for? And I'm going to say this. I love football as much as the next guy. Probably even more than the next guy. But even I don't believe that football is enough to wash away the blood of the Palestinian people. They're going to build these pitches over land where people have died. And they think people are just going to forget and kick ball and be happy and shake hands with people that wanted them to die. That doesn't even make sense. And it's quite frankly insulting to everyone that people are just meant to just move on and play football and be happy. And football can be such a unifying thing, you know, across language and culture. People can find common ground in football. But I don't know if football is the best thing to introduce to Gaza right now. I think they need hospitals. I think they need infrastructure. I'm sorry, but there's definitely things higher on the priority list than football in Gaza right now. But the fact that they think that this is going to be a big deal and it's going to actually solve anything, it's crazy. I don't know, man. I don't know. Football's powerful, really powerful, but it ain't that powerful. Do you know what I mean? It ain't that powerful. And to me, it seems that they're trying to use football as a blanket to cover up what they're doing in the region. And it's a shame that our beautiful game is being used and pimped out by Infantino and FIFA in this way. And I honestly believe that if Infantino really loved and cared about football, they wouldn't be doing this. Because to me, this goes against everything that I believe football to be. And the fact that it's being sold off to Trump and to America and Israel, and it's being used in this sort of, it's being used in a way that we've never seen before. it's so sad to see and deeply troubling. Yeah, and especially when you compare how other states and conflicts have been treated by FIFA. Notably Russia being immediately sanctioned and banned from competing in competitions. Was there a FIFA plan to reconstruct Ukraine through football? Is there a FIFA plan to reconstruct, other places in the world through football? I don't know. It just seems very strange. And a lot of things recently have felt that way. And when you have all these questions and don't get any answers, you just begin to ask yourself whether anything is even worth believing in anymore. And actually, when we, when we could look deeper into people's motives and their connections to who, and their connections to very interesting people. Again, do your research, please. Do your research into everything that's going on. And yeah, somehow, sadly enough, football is interwoven into this dark mess of politics and recent events, unfortunately. Yeah, so they want to get 75 million dollars worth of investment. Now, the board of Not So Much Peace and FIFA are working hand in hand to deliver football to the people of Gaza. What people? I don't know. Yeah, we'll see how that develops, but we'll see if football is enough to make everyone forget what happened in Gaza. I don't think they will. What are we going to touch on next? Should I go to Prestiani or should I go to Tommy Robinson? Let's go into on-pitch politics. So, on-pitch politics, as I introduced last episode, is where we look at things that happen on the pitch and look at them through a political lens. And unfortunately, just like last time where we spoke about Gift Orban in the Syria facing what we assume to be some sort of unfair treatment, potentially because of his race, this time we're speaking about another racism incident, but this time an explicitly racist incident. So Vinicius Jr., Real Madrid player, superstar, was playing in a game against Benfica in Champions League, and he was racially abused by Gianluca Prestiani, a Benfica player. Now, I should be saying allegedly racially abused, but Vinicius Jr. had no reason to say that someone racially abused him. I think fundamentally, let's start there. I don't know why people think that black people would ever claim to be racially abused when they weren't. Like, it's such a weird thing to do. And yeah, I just don't think that that's ever on anyone's mind to do, especially in such a moment. So yeah, we'll come on to why I think that Prestiani said what he said. But Kylian Mbappe supposedly also heard what was said to Vinicius. He said after the game, he put his shirt here over his mouth like this to say Vinicius is a monkey 5 times. I heard it. There are Benfica players who heard it as well. And after that point, everything you have seen started. I want to try and explain it calmly. I don't want to speak in general manner. I have come to Portugal many times. I have been lucky to have many teammates and friends in Portugal, and nothing like this has ever happened to me. Okay, cool. So yeah, Kylian Mbappe supported Vinicius Jr.'s versions of events. However, Jose Mourinho, who could have never heard what was said, seemed to be so adamant that his player, Gianluca Prestiani, did not racially abuse Vinicius Jr. And Mourinho said some very interesting things after the game. So, asked if he felt Vinicius incited the crowd, Mourinho said, "Yes, I believe so. It should be the crazy moment of the game, an amazing goal. Unfortunately, he was not just happy to score an astonishing goal. When you score like that, you celebrate in a respectful way. I told Vinicius, when you score a goal like that, you must just celebrate and walk back. When he was arguing about racism, I told him the biggest person in the history of this club, Eusebio, was black. This club, the last thing that it is racist. If in his mind there was something in relation to that, this is Benfica." Vinicius and Prestiani told me different things, but I don't believe in one or the other. I want to be an independent. Mourinho's comments have been called a disgrace, and rightly so. So let's get into it. First of all, the insinuation that how Vinicius celebrates his goals or how he acts in any way justifies the racism that he receives, which is evidenced and factual because many fans have been sanctioned. Benfica fans were punished for racism in this game. But also, it's so crazy that people can be blamed for the racism that they face in this day and age, especially on such a massive stage as well. And coming from Mourinho, who many people see as an icon and great of the game, one of the best managers of all time, has worked closely with a lot of black players, Essien, Mikel, Eto'o, etc. This is very just not it. And Vincent Kompany, the Bayern Munich manager, had something to say about Mourinho and spoke really well. So I'm gonna play his clip here.
He mentions the name of Eusebio to say that Benfica cannot be racist because the best player in the history of Benfica is Eusebio. You know what black players had to go through in the 1960s? Was he there to travel with Eusebio every away game? When he went to every place in Europe? Probably at the time, because my dad is a black person from the 1960s also who made his way. Probably at the time, the only option they had is to be quiet and to say nothing and to be above it and to be 10 times better, to get a little bit of credit and people say, actually, he's good. That's Eusebio's life, probably. And today to use his name to make a point about Vini Jr., who's actually finally in a situation where he can say something about it. There's a lot of players who play in different leagues still in Europe who don't have a voice. There's players today in Hungary, in Bulgaria, in Serbia. If something happens to them and they are black players, they have zero chance to have any kind of support.
What Mourinho was saying about Eusebio and Benfica not being racist because Eusebio was black and he was their best player in history. One, just because a black player played for a club and was great doesn't absolve all future players from being accused of racism if they are racist. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. And I know footballers and football managers are not the smartest people, but I don't think Jose Mourinho is that dumb to make that assumption. And I think it's quite fair to say he was just talking out of his ass and probably a little embarrassed that his own player had done this and he was trying to save face of himself and the club. And this whole trying to remain independent, and they said different things. I don't know if two people say different things, but the thing that they're talking about is racism, I'm probably going to side on the person that said that they are racially abused. I don't know. Because if you're asking me straight up, do I think Prestiani did it? Yes. Yes, I do. Why? Because he's Argentinian. I know that sounds crazy, but we've all seen the history that Argentina have in football alone when it comes to racism and black players. After they won the World Cup, we saw how they behaved. The racist song that they were singing about Mbappe and the French players. After they won the Copa America, we saw how they were acting. Again, bringing up the French players who weren't even playing in the Copa America. So even if we were looking at football just by itself, Argentina hasn't got the best history when it comes to racism against black people. But as a country, and a history, it's dark. Because I've done the research and it's dark. I know I say do your research, but this time I did the research and it's dark. Because you might be mistaken in believing that there's no black people in Argentina and there never have been. That is far from the case. Former Argentine President Carlos Menem, who was the president of Argentina between 1989 and 1999, once declared that in Argentina, blacks do not exist. That is a Brazilian problem. So in 2026, when we get an Argentine player racially abusing a Brazilian black player, I believe it. I believe he said that. Anyway, so yeah, you can be forgiven in thinking that black people never existed in Argentina and they don't exist today. But that isn't quite true. You see, in 1778, 37% of the people of Argentina identified as being of African descent. Fast forward to 2010, only 0.5% of people identified as being from African descent. So what happened in that time? Did all the black people just miraculously disappear? Get up and move of their own volition? Just to go back to the 37% of people in Argentina in 1778 who identified as being from African descent. For reference, only 4% of people in the UK are black. 37%. That's a hell of a lot. And where did they go? Well, Argentina carried out this whitening process where they kind of enacted certain policies that led to the decline of the black population in Argentina, such as forcing the black men, to join the army and fight in wars against the Spanish, I believe. These men were sent to fight in wars that they knew that they wouldn't win, and they were under-equipped, so of course they died in massive numbers. Another example of the whitening policies was how black people in Argentina were forced to live in certain areas that were rife in disease, forced to live in squalor, and of course they got dysentery and cholera and all these things, and then died. So again, caused a massive decline in the population. And a lot of black people did go to Brazil. And as we know, Brazil is home to the largest number of black people outside of the African continent. So it makes sense why Argentine president called it a Brazilian problem, you know. But yeah, I think in 2026, we can still see those attitudes playing out in football of all places. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think Prestiani racially abused Vinicius Jr. I shouldn't have needed to tell you about the history of Argentina for you to get that either, or Mourinho to get it. But hey, that's where we are. And, you know, not just in football, but in life, so many times I feel like people play in your face and tell you how to act when you're racially abused or you're disrespected. And they will list out any excuse under the sun just to give you a reason why you couldn't have been racially abused when you know you were. And yeah, especially Mourinho using Eusebio, that's even darker because like Eusebio was Eusebio definitely faced hella racism in Portugal at Benfica. So I don't think Eusebio would particularly like his name being used to paper over the cracks of racism that are showing itself again in football. So yeah, Mourinho, you are wrong for that. Cristiano, you are wrong for that. Vinicius Jr., keep dancing, keep celebrating. People are using racism to bait him, to anger him, to throw him off his game. And when you're good, they can't tell you you're not good. So they're gonna try and find a way to throw you off, to, you know what I mean, get you on their level. And that's essentially what it is. But Vinicius Jr. scored, I think he scored in both legs. So it clearly didn't work. As it stands, Prestiani has been suspended by UEFA and is facing a 10-game ban. UEFA appointed an ethics inspector and he's looking into it. And yeah, he believes that there's evidence that he has broken the regulations. So yeah, he's facing a 10-game ban. I think as well, I saw that there were a lot of conversations about how he covered his mouth with his shirt. So I don't necessarily think that players covering their mouths when they speak to their teammates or opposition shows an intent to be offensive. I generally think that they are just trying to, be protective of what they say. However, if you were trying to be offensive, it would definitely help if your mouth was covered. And under this guise of, privacy on the pitch amongst players, there is room for people to say certain things and try and get away with it. Yeah, it's crazy that this is happening on the Champions League stage, which it's not what football's about. And again, it's like football's this great thing, but from it being used in Gaza to cover up what's going on over there, from the racism incidents happening in the Champions League, it's just like, it's a shame, but we just can't enjoy the beautiful game. It's always something. And that's why we're here on Keep Politics Out of Football, because unfortunately, we can't keep politics out of football. They are like this, they're besties. So that was on pitch politics, and now we're moving on. Now for this next segment, I want you to close your eyes and imagine. The date is May 16th. It's the FA Cup final, Arsenal versus Newcastle. Somehow you've got a ticket for you and your missus and you're ready for the game. Arsenal shirts on, Arsenal scarves on, you head out. Get to the train station and you see a large crowd in front of you. it must be fellow Arsenal fans because you see red and white in the distance. But as you get closer, you see it's not the red and white of Arsenal, but the red and white of St. George's flags. And actually, you've just stumbled into a bunch of people going to the United Kingdom rally organised by Tommy Robinson. Unfortunately, you won't have to imagine this, as it's been announced by Tommy Robinson that the next United Kingdom march is on May 16th, the same day as the FA Cup final, where police are already going to be stretched and there's going to be large crowds of people in London anyway. So it's very convenient that this day was chosen. Why? Well, if you were in the business of, inflating numbers of your march, that would be a good way to do that. Also, if you wanted to get into trouble and cause mayhem, the police being, occupied somewhere else would also be very helpful as well. So why they chose that date is very important. It's interesting how these groups of people used football and the football calendar to rile up this nationalist sentiment. During the World Cup, I'm sure we're going to see plenty of it, with flags already being flown for the World Cup, but then how it's going to be twisted to be like, oh yeah, look at how everyone is supporting this movement. It's important with things like this to keep your eyes open and see things for what they really are and not what they're said to be. But yeah, Tommy Robinson has announced the United Kingdom rally in central London. He's drawn on Christian symbols. He said, 4 nations, 1 kingdom under God. I don't want to fearmonger, but yeah, I think football is being dragged into a lot of places where it has no business being. Whether it's FIFA and Infantino dragging it into the Middle East, whether it's Tommy Robinson dragging it into this sort of thing, I just feel really sad about it all. And, especially in a year where Arsenal, fingers crossed, inshallah, please, are going to win something, the league, Champions League, I don't know. In a year where Arsenal are expected to win something, it's a total shame. And it really saddens me that football is also in this very dark place globally and nationally as well. And, I just want my country back. I just want my beautiful game back. I just want to go back to 2018 where England were surpassing all expectations for how good they were. And, it was Love Island after the football and we beat Colombia and it was the penalties and it was just a vibe. That was national unity like we'd never seen before. And I think football has that power. But too often we're seeing football being dragged into these conversations like the Maccabi Tel Aviv banning whole fiasco thing. It's just a mess. And, we are taken away from the beautiful game. And it's funny because, a lot of that is being leveled at Arsenal and the Premier League being terrible and, poor level of football. But across the board, not even just on the pitch, but around football and how football is being used by brands and countries alike for their own gain, what we're seeing on the pitch is purely a side effect of a disease running through football. And that disease is money and power. And yeah, sorry to bring it back to that. I don't think an individual manager or a team or whatever can ruin the product of football. I think there's so many factors that influence it. And I think far beyond a manager, tactics and personnel, it's financial incentives, it's regulation, it's branding, it's sponsorships, it's TV rights, it's all of these things that play a part and are why what we're seeing on the pitch isn't maybe what people want to see. And likewise, what we're seeing off the pitch, again, sometimes isn't things that we want to see. So we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. We just want to see the FA Cup final. We don't want to see Tommy Robinson and the March, the United Kingdom March. We just want to see Arsenal win the FA Cup for a 15th time. Hey, I know I want to see that. I don't know about you, but yeah. Okay. So coming to the end of the podcast now, I'm just doing a roundup of things I've seen on Twitter. I feel like this is a good end of podcast segment. So this is something that I found really funny. In the Gorton and Denton by-election, where the Greens won, Hannah Spencer won. So after the winners of the Gorton and Denton by-election were announced, ITV were doing interviews just outside the room with MPs, and Labour MP Brian Leishman was repeating calls for Starman to resign, saying he has to go. And then someone quote tweeted it saying Labour Fan TV. And it's so funny because you can't help but see the parallels between that and Arsenal Fan TV. When they were saying,
He has to go, blood. He has to go, blood.
those images stick in my mind to this day. And in politics, we're seeing now that same sort of media circus around politics. There is so much he said, she said, he's got to go, posturing and, positioning of people and seeding things in the media. And, there's factions of these people on this side and these people on that side. And, they want this person to be in and that person to be out. And, it's the same thing that we saw in football. And I think as someone who is, thinking about how to engage people in politics and get them thinking about politics in that way, we need to frame it more in this sense that like there is things that you can recognize from football, from other spaces, and that can be your entry point. And I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of fan channels, fan cams, AFTV, whatever club you support, TV, mostly because they say that these things breed off negativity, which I don't think is entirely true. It just depends on the intention of the content and the people making the content. But I wonder if that same view is had in the politics world, and I don't think it is. I think the media and the way that politicians and people in politics use the media, I think the media is definitely seen as a tool to be used in politics, to get some sort of advantage, either in elections or, internal politics and parties, stuff like that. Whereas the media in football is more seen as this, it's meant to be this thing for the people that to give them access to football. But actually, I think there are far more similarities in terms of the media in football and the media in politics than we like to admit. And actually, I think what we're going to see over the next, few years in the next general election is the emergence of these fan channels, fan cams in politics. While politicians might feel comfortable doing interviews with ITV and BBC, they will be smart if they actually start doing interviews with people that are creating content online, because those people are actually speaking to groups of people that maybe can't be reached through mainstream media. Because let's be face it, who's really watching mainstream news and stuff like that on TV? Yeah, you might see a tweet or something on TikTok, but that's few and far between, right? The smart politicians will be the ones that actually use media, use content creators and moments like this in the same way that AFTV created a lot of hype and they built their following. The smart politicians will be the ones that follow that blueprint. And yeah, don't want to give anyone too many ideas, but yeah, that's my prediction. What else did I see? What else did I see on Twitter? I know it's called X, but we don't speak about X's anymore, do we? On a future episode, maybe not this episode, I want to talk about the football kit industry and the money in football kits and how many kits Arsenal have released this year alone. And yeah, whether football is being exploited in that regard. And related to that, I also want to touch on how brands like Adidas and Nike, they kind of touch on or lean into certain themes and tropes that maybe shouldn't be being used to sell products to people. Mainly, I'm speaking about the Adidas advert. I don't know if you saw that the Team Pred Team F50 advert they did. It was a really good advert, but the whole thing is predicated on this idea that like they're treating the boots like it's like drugs, or like they're like drug dealers, that they're doing like they're like a rival gang of like dealers, but it's like F50s are the things that they're supplying, or boots that they're supplying. And I was like, oh, this is cool, but like a lot of players love to like kind of cosplay as these like gangster guys and these guys. I know they love it, but I don't know. I just feel like sometimes I'm like, who's on the production team? Can I see what you look like? Can I see the mood board that you had? Can I see the process? And then I'll judge whether I like it or not. Do you know what I mean? But that's for a future episode. I want to do a deep dive into that. I knew there was one more thing I wanted to cover. Oh yes. Okay. So before I end the episode of Keep Politics Out of Football, episode 2, I want to talk about some parallels that I'm seeing in football and politics. And that parallel that I'm thinking about is how we are being gaslit. We are constantly being gaslit as people. Whether it's football or politics, they will tell you something and then say they didn't tell you that. They will do something and then say they didn't do it. And be adamant in your face and tell you the problems are elsewhere. To be more specific, I'm now speaking about how people like Gary Neville suddenly have a new stick to beat Arsenal with. We're too physical. We're doing too much at corners. The dark arts now have suddenly become far too much for people to handle. And it's crazy because we are the same club that was soft. We lacked cojones. That was a running gag. The fact that Troy Deeney even said that on the TV and it was broadcast and it was, said over and over again by many people shows you the perception that people had of Arsenal. But now that it's changed, it's too much. It's too much. Rightly so, a lot of Arsenal fans have been pulling up the receipts. Hector Bellerin got a forearm to the head, concussed, didn't know where he was. The goal was given, and again, Arsenal were too soft. But now, if we were to do that, oh my God, the articles, the think pieces, the statements, it will be crazy. And I think the gaslighting in this respect has been so evident, and rightly so, a lot of Arsenal fans are pulling it up, is because we have the receipts. We've got a long list of clips, tweets, TV programs where people have been speaking about Arsenal in a certain way. And over time, that's changed. But people's threshold for what is right and what is wrong is not consistent. And it feels like it changes, especially when it suits them and especially when it comes to Arsenal. But I do see the parallels with all of this to the way in which the Tories under Kemi Badenoch are gaslighting us. And not even just the Tories as well. It's now reform because a lot of them are former Tories, like Suella Braverman. They are essentially just like the old Tory party. So I don't know how anyone is taking them seriously. But it's crazy. So Kemi Badenoch is all charged up at the moment about student loans. She's definitely seeing this as a way to kind of get favour amongst people, young people. But we're not silly. We're not stupid. We remember. She's talking about the Plan 2 student loan being a debt trap for people. The Tories introduced the Plan 2 student loan in 2012. Like, we didn't forget that. We've got the receipts. And it's crazy how a lot of the Tories and reform people are saying, these are the problems of the country. This is what's wrong with the country. But if you look at who actually brought these policies in, it was them. It's the same people that steal your stuff and then help you look for it. It's crazy. And I feel like we're just being gaslit across the board in politics, in football. But in 2026, we've got the receipts. We've seen it. We know what you did and what you didn't do, what you said and what you didn't say. So, yeah, the gaslighting isn't working. But I'm shocked. And my biggest takeaway from this whole conversation is that how willing and capable they are to lie to us, to distract us, to confuse us, to gaslight us. And to think that they would get away with it. It's just crazy. So yeah, whether it's in politics, whether it's in football, don't be gaslit by people. Put up the receipts and make sure you never forget. Never forget. The more I think about it, the more I think that the reason why they are using these gaslighting tactics so much and hoping that we forget or have forgotten about certain things that they've done and said in the past is that I think, one, there's this thing that both in football and politics, people can't really say the truth or they can't really say what they want to say or what everyone would want them to say. I mean, Gary Neville couldn't really be pro-Arsenal. There's football on the pitch, and then there's a product that Sky Sports have to sell. And I think Gary Neville is in the latter camp, and he's not in the business of making Arsenal fans happy or being truthful. He's in the business of ratings, in the business of clicks, and yeah, that's the unsaid part. That's the quiet part. There is no objectivity. in this. It was never meant to be objective. Not for him anyway. It's the same in politics and with the Tories. They're gaslighting us and hoping that we've forgotten about certain things because they can't be honest. They can't be truthful because it would remind people, one, but also, more importantly, it would show that nothing's actually changed. These are the same individuals that did the wrong things before. These are the same people that caused the problems that we have today. And these same people want to solve these problems when they had the chance to solve them in government and they didn't. That is the quiet part that they can't say out loud. So they use gaslighting tactics to make us or hope that we forget. And the truth is, we're not forgetting. So gaslight us all you want. It's not going to work. We're not going to vote for you. And whether you like it or not, Arsenal are winning the league. Gary Neville and Carragher and whoever are pointing at Arsenal and saying, they're the reason why the Premier League's so bad. They're the reason why. It's their fault. The corners, the throw-ins. Mind you, Liverpool been doing it recently. They've been getting praised. Brentford's been doing long throw-ins. Kayade's been firing them in. He's been getting praised. That ain't nothing to do with Arsenal. It's the same with politics. They will point at these people, point at those people, immigrants, small boats, working class people, disabled people. Point. When actually the real cause, the real reason why things aren't as good as they should be and as good as they were, it's hardly ever the people that they say it is. So in this life, remember, don't listen to what they tell you. You're feeling in your chest, in your heart, in your head, in your brain, that's probably right. If something doesn't feel right, if you think, hang on, I remember that slightly differently. Yeah, you do remember it differently because that's not what happened. What you remember is how it really happened, right? So yeah. You see, football and politics, they aren't just linked. They also reflect each other in so many ways. And that's why here on Keep Politics Out of Football, we're always going to be here to talk about the football and the politics and how they meet. All right. We've come to the end of the episode. I've been your host, Remy. Thank you for listening. This has been Keep Politics Out of Football. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It's really appreciated. Any support, like and share on socials. And yeah, it's just the beginning. Episode 2. Peace.